bring the Germantown School District Personnel Committee meeting to order December 18th at 5:38. Let's start with a roll call. Mr. Pollack.
Here.
Ms. Higginbotham.
Here.
Myself, here. Item 3, agendas, revisions, and approval.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Ms. Higginbotham with the motion, Mr. Pollack with the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 4, approval of November 6, 2023 meeting minutes.
Move to approve the November 6th, 2023 meeting minutes.
I will second.
Mr. Pollack with the motion, Ms. Higginbotham with the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Item 5, reports and updates. We have Mr. Nowak here with us. Item 5A, teaching resignations.
Thank you. We have one resignation to bring forward. Alyssa Schneider submitted her letter of resignation on November 20th, 2023. Alyssa was hired in August of 2013 as a speech and language pathologist in the Germantown School District. We ask that you, well, this is just personnel, so I know it's brought forward in consent agenda, but if there's anything we'd like to discuss here.
Just notating that it's, I believe, our second speech and language pathologist.
Correct, yeah. This is, and I know a little bit about the district that this person is going to. Ironically, someone left that district from the same role. So there's an awful lot of that going on with this particular position. Some of it is school district to school district related. Some of it, because it's a unique position, is school district or school setting to clinical setting, because their license, granted they have to have kind of both licenses, but many do and have that ability. Sometimes we'll get people from the clinical setting to come to us, and vice versa. Sometimes we have to go into, say, the hospital setting.
This particular instance, this is district to district
Correct.
for the same position, or?
Same position. I know compensation was an important factor in things. The district that this person is going to is one that they desired for multiple reasons. So that's where we're at.
So you said compensation and then multiple reasons that they desire this other district?
Yeah,
Is
some of it.
compensation that, or is it?
Compensation was a major driver. I want to say proximity. I want to say reputation of the district. It's a district in the area that has a very strong reputation, but compensation was definitely a driver.
If I remember correctly, I think that had something to do with our last as well.
It did, although that one, I think there was more of a family piece to it.
Yeah, I'm just
with
looking
certain-
for common threads, and when we see it in the same area,
Yep.
close proximity, I think this is almost, what, month or 2 months apart?
Well, it actually
Am I right on
happened-
that timeline?
Yeah, it happened right up against our last meeting. It was.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
so
November
close to
20th,
it.
that's right. Well, I believe as I look through the agenda, we're gonna be taking care of one of these spots while then reopening it
Yep.
due to this. So it's not that we're unable to attract somebody to fill this, it's just potentially we're losing internal experience through.
Right. Based on the other resignation that you talked about, we're losing 2 speech paths. In this personnel packet, we're bringing forward a new speech path that we're very excited about. I feel very strongly in what she'll bring to the district. We also have one coming in tomorrow. So I know we'll get to that, but it's our hope that as we begin the new year, new calendar year, we're staffed in the speech path position.
Okay. I think as we proceed through the night and more so into the full board, I think we're gonna hear a lot about creative solutions to pay within our buildings, and just seeing this as a back-to-back scenario that was mentioned in both of them, where we can isolate as part of the decision, and very rarely is that ever gonna not be part of a decision and somebody leaving or coming or going, but this might be one of those areas we have to get creative on retention and or attraction.
Right, and if it's where you're going, I think that the tie-in is as we talk about a compensation study, and we look at market analysis of particular positions, that's where that retention piece comes into play, relative to positions like this.
So I think we're moving in that direction, but it appears the market's moving faster, so to speak. So I get it. I hear it. We hear it in the community, right? We're not deaf to it, and I don't think anyone up here, and I'll speak for myself, but conversations we've had, I don't think anyone here has their head buried in the sand about employee retention, attracting the best candidates, and pushing forward to build the best school system we can for our community. I think it's a priority for us. I think we hear about this more, but I think we hear about this more because this committee asked to hear about it more, because it holds the committee, the board, and the district responsible for ensuring we are acting timely on some of these things. So I get it. I get that that's out. That narrative is out there that this is quote unquote happening more, but we're talking about it more intentionally. So as we move forward, we'll continue to work through some of those solutions. Thank you.
Did you say that speech pathology seems to be not even just particularly our district, but multiple districts are having issues with the speech pathology?
This is the hottest thing. There's just a rotation in the region.
Do we know why? I mean, is there?
There's a shortage of the position,
Mhm.
and there's more and more students that need
Need it.
speech
Yeah.
paths.
And as I said, the case of where this particular speech path is going, there's one leaving there.
It's not that there are more kids, they are jumping to another district. This is the
Yeah.
fill, it's a domino effect.
Right, right, yeah, it just kind of seems a lot of movement there.
It's impacting private schools as well, because when part of our responsibility is to service through special education the private schools within our school district boundaries,
Sure.
first public school students, so it's hurting private schools as well, with
Right.
the number of minutes met and those type of things.
Anything else on that one? 5B, teacher contracts. Guess what we have on here?
Yeah, I literally flipped the coin. The first teacher contract we bring forward is for Paige Christ. This is at County Line Elementary. Now, this isn't for the speech path that just left. This was for the initial one,
Mhm.
just from our last meeting. So Paige comes to us. This will be on a limited term basis to finish out the year. Our hope is that she stays with us and that we roll this into a regular contract. We're very encouraged about the experience and level of expertise that she brings. Our speech paths are excited to have her. Our administration is, this is one where I get calls, are we there? Is she on? Is she with us? So we're very excited about this one. The second one, the second teacher contract to bring forward is for Reagan Christ. It's at Kennedy Middle School, 8th grade language arts position. This position is being recommended as a result of a teacher resignation that was from earlier this fall. It's a limited term contract, 93 days, at $19,578. Again, many times when we hire in this situation mid-year, it sets the stage for, these are candidates, teachers with very strong potential to stay with us. Our conversations with them are pretty honest and open relative to, at the end of the school year, because this is limited term, your contract ends, but we're in a position where most likely, both of these will be required relative to staffing. And the hope would be that they're able to stay with us.
Anything? Yeah, I think it shows that we're out there recruiting, right? We're bringing in people to fill these positions. I think, and to your point, part of the front conversation with them, it sounds like, is about, well, this is limited term. We're always looking for the following year, and I would assume that's happening as that onboarding comes in, or the interview process. What are your plans for the future? Is this just something you're interested in for the short term, or in a long-term role?
Yeah, it's obviously not something we can guarantee, but we make it very clear that in one of these cases, it's a new teacher that's in the process of completing student teaching, and it's a unique time for anyone like that to be starting, because unless they go into a day-to-day subbing situation, they're in a limited term role like this. As they look to employment beyond this school year, being able to say that they were in a role for an extended period of time goes a long, long way. So as much as they have to offer us, we have something to offer them. It's an exciting time for them to grow into the position. Jess worked with this particular hire quite a bit, and was very excited to bring Reagan in.
If nobody has anything else on that, we'll go to 5C, staffing update.
Yeah, and this is our regular report that will come anytime we have this committee. Some of this seems similar to the last time we were together, but it simply because of the positions and what's unfolded with the speech paths. But the general theme of what we see, you can see it in the chart on page 2, but it summarized it relative to positions. In terms of teacher contracted positions, there are 3 positions. There's the ELL position, which we are interviewing for this week and hope to solidify someone in that role for after the break. The speech path, which we've been talking about, and then the interpreter position is still out there to be filled. One of those, like Dr. Reuter was saying, it's very difficult in the area, in the state, probably in the nation to find. So we're still working through that. We still are looking for building subs. As those are TOC candidates, we continue to seek candidates to fill those. We talked today about some creative solutions that we'd like to explore. But as we've said, we need to do that because we're not seeing the interest that we thought we would. People like the flexibility of subbing. I think when we meet again, we'll share a little more, hopefully more, relative to another way that we can do this. It's a way of looking at, I think I can say this, working with our current aides who are in limited roles and utilizing them via TOC potentially in situations where they might want to work more and their schedules align. We have the ability to do that. So we'd like to explore that.
I think those 3, I mean, they stand out. It's a position that we created as an attempt to problem solve some substitute, or I shouldn't say problem solve, but add to some consistency around our subbing. So while it looks like there's 3 vacant positions, these are positions, the subs are still there. They're just not being filled as a building sub, which the initial start, my understanding, was to build some consistency around faces and people in our building. So I think the language, the interpreter, it's an interesting one. That's one we've been seeing on here for quite some time now.
We're currently using outside contracted services, but we'd like to
Yeah,
have,
the services are being provided,
it's
but,
just not with our employee consistently the same person.
yeah. And that's why we'd have one on staff, right, that consistency
And you made
side of
that
it.
change as a board to make that a teaching position versus an hourly employee as well.
Yeah, that did happen.
Yep.
Yep.
Yes.
It's posted that way.
Yeah, so, I mean, those are things that, when we talk about creative solutions, we're taking those steps. It's not that nothing's being done and these just sit vacant.
Right.
It's not idle in that aspect. Now, the interpreter one's interesting, and we've had discussions. We have you'd say a high demand in CISA 1 comparative to others. So on top of a shortage, we're also probably a little bit of a workload.
Yeah.
I don't call it unicorn, but we stand out compared to some of the other districts that may be looking to fill that position as well. So if a candidate's looking at workload or expectations, we may have a little higher compared to some other.
Yeah, and then from an FTE standpoint, we have more than a typical district our size, given our population of students that we service. And that was the reason we broke away from a CISA contract this last year, to have an outside employee and made it full-time within the district. It's more cost-effective, and it's now our employee that we can build and collaborate with and build connections with families instead of a different contracted employee every year with kids. We just need to find an additional one.
Yeah, I guess I view that a lot similar to this building subs. That's a position we created to service a need and build that consistency. It's just a matter of finding this right candidate for a long-term.
Or anyone to apply as
yeah.
well, yeah.
Well, yeah, and at this point, I mean, we were building a position for that. And the interest that we were anticipating may be there, might not be there. And then we might have to return to how we were
Right.
servicing those needs before, but we were making an attempt to build better consistency for our students, so. I don't look at some of these as negatives. I look at some of these as attempts to better the district, so. As long as we keep talking about it, keep working the solutions, we'll come across them.
Yeah, but, and I didn't know, there are also 2 special ed aid vacancies. And, you know, for this time of year, that's pretty typical. You know, a lot of times there are positions where, you know, people go into them without long-term plans to stay in those roles. But they're pretty critical relative to the students. They are very critical relative to the student population that they serve. So our particular elementary principals are working hard to fill them. I think we've had one this week that got filled.
So the last position on there, obviously it's special student education development aid. New position, student need, is that a student has come across a new need, or we have a new student with?
We had a new student move into the district that came with a pretty extensive IEP that the team reconvened around, but there will be need for another adult outside of our original staffing plan, given the severity of the case.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions?
For the interpreter position, what language or languages are we talking about?
This would be a
Sign language.
sign language.
What sign language?
Yeah, we have a high deaf and hard of hearing population in the district,
Okay.
which is outside the norm for CISA 1.
Very good.
D, compensation study update.
Okay. We wanted to bring you up to speed on where we are with our comp study. It's been a couple of months since we've talked about this. Remember back to earlier in the fall, we outlined a process. I kind of summarized on a monthly basis what we were intending to do. The background that I provided, the front end and it gives the overview of what our intentions for this study are, and ultimately what we'd like it to help us to do down the road, specifically as we move into 24, 25, and hiring season, if you will. The important piece tonight, though, is to draw attention to our next important step, which is focus groups that are going to be conducted in January. So I think it was last week, we put out I guess not a survey, but we're seeking feedback for people that were interested in participating in the focus groups. We have 4 dates that are identified for focus groups. Those focus groups will be 16 teachers each group. They're set up relative to teaching experience with some on the very low end. I think it was 1 to 6 years, ranging, and then incremental groupings up through those with, significantly high levels of experience in the last group. As we get interest, get people that, want to participate, we're going to look, as we said, about at experience levels. We're also going to look at teaching roles. If it's elementary, middle, high, specials, areas outside of the classroom, be it, speech paths or school psychs. We want a wide variety of input coming in. And the focus of the focus groups is really seeking input. This is not going to be us engaging in discussion, or debate around what compensation models should look like, but rather it's asking very pointed questions around what's working, what isn't, what kinds of things you value, our teachers value in compensation, in a compensation model. And from there, that will obviously analyze the feedback that we receive, and that will set the stage for the next level of work, which is looking at budgetarily what we can do, what we can afford to do, and then designing a model, looking at what we currently have, possibly making tweaks, possibly making some bigger types of moves, with the idea that as we move forward spring, we'll bring recommendations here for changes to a model.
I guess I'll start on this. So we've heard some public comments in regards to specifically apparently this committee's efforts in this area and attention to this subject. I would say some of them are probably made of ignorance. Arrogance would come to mind on several of those. This is in my first year here, this was a topic in my head, and as I learned the district for the first year, it became readily apparent we needed to start attacking this. And this compensation model, or this compensation study, is a result of that. I don't think I'm the only one that came to that conclusion, because this board doesn't do anything on the voice of one, does it? With unanimous decisions, or majority decisions, I should say. If anybody's been paying attention to this process, they would know the initial plan had multiple phases in it. And the first phase was to seek out what our neighboring districts, comparable districts, would do. We've done that. You've done that. Presented us that information. The second phase was internal. It was internally listening to our employees, seeing what was on their mind, what you've just explained to us. And unfortunately, that takes time. But getting it right takes time. So I appreciate the hard work the district's put into this, continues to put into this, and will push forward as we look to include all voices into the totality of some of the decisions that are going to come out of this. So if there's any, I guess I would leave it for clarifying statement. That's what I have.
I would just, while this work takes time, there's a very, I don't want to call it a deadline, but there's a very clear time frame that fits how schools function relative to staffing, and that time around April, May, when we're going to need to be bringing new teachers in for various reasons. So the process is, as you mentioned, begins with learning as much as we can, listening, and then taking action with the goal of attracting and retaining. Like, a lot of this discussion, in the last 10 minutes is about potentially people that we would bring into the district. But an important part of it as well is our current employees relative to their compensation and what that looks like and what that means relative to them staying here. Unfortunately, the major driver in all of this is money. If we could do anything we could to make it an extremely attractive plan, we would. But unfortunately, as we all know, there are limitations in that regard. So we have to be very smart with how we proceed. We have to be very smart relative to what we look relative to others, and we'll do that. We'll do that from my end relative to human resources and the people that I interact with, from a business standpoint and from a area standpoint, from Dr. Reuter's perspective in terms of the people that he interacts with quite regularly. So it's an exciting time. It's time. We need to do this.
I think for clarification too, on the focus study piece, we've had, over 64, 65 people as of this morning. Teachers have until the end of the day Friday before the break to sign up. We want to make sure that we have focused and balanced in the same variables in each of those 4 focus groups. They'll be asked the same questions. To Mr. Nowak's point, it's not an answer Q&A. If you've ever participated in a focus group, if you're asked a question, you're asked to talk. And we're going to record, so we have a transcript, and then we'll do a thematic analysis of each of the focus groups and build out the overall themes across the district as part of our report. The second phase to that then is looking at market analysis. The report from the previous agenda topic shows there's a clear-cut area when you look at market analysis. We have people leaving high-need positions, and there's a lack of people in the field in those positions. That would say that those are areas of compensation that need to increase versus a saturated area. But you can't make those changes mid-year because then it shifts everyone in those given positions. So we want to do this methodically, and it takes time, and do it right, control variables, and have a process versus making decisions that then could hamper the board and the school district 5 years down the road because we can't fund a compensation model, which we're seeing if you pick up a newspaper in surrounding districts who are closing buildings.
So,
Yes.
and that was a point I was going to lead into. Through some of our discussions and analysis of surrounding districts, we've seen instances where districts have been quick to pull a lever without the thought of the unintended consequences that it may have. And whether it's a year, 2 years, or 5 years, we're seeing a lot of surrounding districts starting to run into some major problems without that forethought. And I think, once again, while there's a timeline to it, we're focused on the totality of the decision for our tenured staff, for our young current staff, for prospective employees. And that's not an easy conversation. So I appreciate that we're having it.
I'd also like to add that at the end of all of this, when the compensation study is completed, we've committed as a board to have a learning session for us to discuss those restrictions that we have. We're going to put the budget with the compensation model, with payroll, with all of the expenses that we have as a district and why we do the things we do. we've actually had people ask in the public, even teachers, ask, well, why can't you do that? Well, we can explain all of those situations. We'll make it a public meeting and we'll record it and it'll give a reference so people can go look, well, this is why we do what we do. There's a reason behind it. We have a limited resources. We have a budget in the state that controls how much we can raise our tax base, how much we receive from the state. All of that plays into what we're doing. We're trying to be fiscally responsible. We're trying to live within our means. That all has to happen. Otherwise, we end up like these other districts. But I think that publicly needs to be recognized, and people need to understand where we're coming from and why we do the things we do. And I think that type of a meeting helps to alleviate some of that, the misinformation that's out there and people not understanding, thinking we're just evil people that don't want to pay teachers, which is the furthest thing from the truth.
And Brittany, correct me if I'm wrong, but 85% of our budget is human, right? That's not just teachers, but that's 80 to 85%.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's lost on anybody either that anytime there's kind of this what if or what's going to happen type of situation either, that those people who are impacted will feel a little stress, will be wondering what's going to happen. But like it's been said, to just pull the lever, give some cash out, not only this year, but once you start increasing salary years further, the next state budget that comes out, I don't want to sit here and cross my fingers and hope that the legislature and the governor will agree as to how much money, extra money we might be able to get, and then close that gap because of that action. Trust me, I think we all probably get it. I know I get it as far as there's these worries, there's these questions, there's these what ifs. But I think we've taken the right approach to this. And granted, it's a long process. But I think in the end, we'll get to a comfortable spot. Hopefully we'll make a large number of people happy, or at least satisfied, and be better in the long run because of the process.
I'll also add that if anybody wants to focus their ire in the proper direction, it would be with DPI and with the state legislator to fix the state funding formula. Districts like ours are getting decimated by that formula, which doesn't work anymore. That no one even wants to look at it. That's where the problem can be solved really simple. I think more of a focus on pay per pupil would make a lot of sense and make it fair for all districts so that you're comparing apples to apples. I don't think the economy is that different across the state that a district should have more money per pupil. We're in the low end of, correct me if I'm wrong, the average price per pupil, whereas we're also on the low end of teacher compensation. Well, those two kind of fit together. If we had the kind of budgets that these other districts had that have been bloated, being a negative tertiary district, we're in a tough situation because we don't get all the money we give the state that comes back to us. It ends up going to other districts and they have these fat budgets that they can play with. We don't have that. So if you want to be upset with people, talk to DPI, talk to your legislators, and get them to fix the problem, because it's a problem that has been hampering us for a long time.
And I'd refer to the 2023 annual report that we sent out that had a table in there that highlighted some of what you've been talking about.
Yep.
Where certain districts over 5 years received tens of millions of dollars more than we did as comparable districts.
Right.
I think that's an important piece to those focus groups, because again, a lot of the stuff that you were talking about, nobody really knows all those little pieces that go into how much, we can raise salaries. And so when you have a focus group and you have people obviously there to give their opinions and it's a wish list, and all those things, because now if you're not able to do those things, now it's just, well, I told you what I needed and now I'm not getting that. So it can be just as frustrating as it can be rewarding. So I think in that focus group, if you kind of make clear all of those things, why, we're at where we're at, so that there is at least some understanding that we are, and that's why this compensation study is so important, because we are trying to move forward and, address all of these issues that are here, but there are also restraints that we don't have any control over. And I think making that clear in a focus group, so that if they're not being addressed, it can be just as frustrating as it can be.
I mean, a lot of our assumptions simply start with salary, but for all we know, we might have a good number of people who carry the insurance where they might be okay with their salary, but man, if there's something we could do on the benefit side for health insurance to decrease or increase, whatever it might be, that's where some of that will come out in a focus group. I mean,
Well, and being realistic on what we can and
Yeah.
can't do with those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I've been singing from the rooftop for a long time about this issue, and I've talked to DPI, I've talked to legislators, and half of them don't know what you're talking about, and the other half don't want to do anything about it. They just ignore the situation. So now I'm coming and asking for help. We need as many people engaged in this as possible. I helped somebody try and run for the DPI superintendent position because we had such a failing DPI. I tried. I've been doing this for a long time, and it's time that we fix the problem. It really is, but we need help.
Yeah, I think focusing that in the right direction instead of at the board would be more productive.
Yeah, well, we're gonna get there, we'll work through it, we'll continue to push through it, and I'm firmly committed, I think the board's firmly committed, and this is the right work for the district. And, on a personal note, I am, to some of Tracy's comments, as these conversations start and that angst builds, that uncertainty occurs, for some of our staff, I'm not immune to that. I've been through that process. I've watched legislative bodies hold my pension in their hands as a bartering chip, so to speak, between city and state. We understand that. We're not ignorant to that thought and that process. We get it. But if you don't ask honest questions and you just let that manifest in more of an attack mode instead of helping us work with this and through this process, and it sounds like we have a lot of people signing up to do that. Hopefully they continue to sign up to do that, understanding it's a listening session. These aren't demands, this isn't a negotiation session, but we take what you're saying seriously, put it against all of the other data, and let's see where we can come out on the far end. So I'm excited for it, as hard as the work is and as some of the angst that it creates in the district does. It's the right work to do. So, anything else?
Okay, thanks.
Appreciate the in-depth conversation on it greatly. So that finishes 5D. 6 unfinished business, we have none. 7 new business, we have none. 8, I'll take a motion.
move to adjourn?
I'll second.
Mr. Pollak with the motion, Ms. Higginbotham with the second. Any discussion? See none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are closed at adjourned at 6:17 PM.